Alright, how you doing guys? You all know what I look like by now, so we're going to get to the fun part here in our cider experiment. Pardon the dishwasher in the background. We're going to actually pitch a batch of cider, pitch the yeast, and get this thing going. So what I'm using here is the Brewer's Best Cider House Select. I'm not particularly loyal to that brand or anything, just was a cider yeast I could find on Amazon really. I have my little jeweler scale. I think I showed that to you guys before. And there's directions on this packet, of course. I have my thermometer and a little graded measuring cup. Showed you both of those. And what we're going to do to start, well, back up a step. I already sanitized everything. A gallon jug, using boiling water, this little graduated piece here, and the thermometer and everything. Packet says that this will survive up to 82 degrees, and to make sure the juice is at least 60 when you pitch it. So we will do that. We'll just run it under, some warmish water under the tap. Make sure in between those two numbers. I think you'd end up putting about 1.8 grams with this particular one into a gallon batch of cider. I've made some that came out a bit strong and I enjoyed it, so I'm actually going to go for 2.5, and then we're going to hydrate it in here, get the yeast alive and kicking, stir that up, let that sit for about 10 minutes, and then I'll pitch it into the fermenter and show you that whole process. So I'll be back in just a jiffy with a little bit, probably less than a couple ounces of 80-degree-ish water. Alright. I'm back. I'm reading just about a little under 80 degrees on that thermometer in that water. As you can see, I weighed out a little bit of my yeast over here as well. 2.4, so whatever, close enough. So all I'm going to do, since I already sanitized the thermometer, and this isn't 100% scientific, is just kind of gently dump as much of it as I can get really into that. I'm going to use the thermometer to stir gently a little bit. Don't want to break it obviously, but I want to get that yeast good and mixed up. Just to hydrate it, just so it gets going a little easier, and to shake the fermenter up or anything to get it all mixed decently and to not clump up at all. So that's the end of that pretty simple process, and that's going to sit for about 10 minutes. Don't let it sit too long. The yeast will eventually die off. There's nothing for them to really feed off of. You're just hydrating them at this point. There's really nothing in there for them to work with. So you go too long and you'll get ineffective yeast. Better too early than too late. They'll just take a little longer to ferment your beverage. So I'm going to set a timer right away, and I'll be back when that is up. Alright, I'm back. I actually cut that a couple minutes short on letting the yeast sit there. I'm just going to grab that from the other counter. Back in 2 seconds. So the reason I did that is it did start to kind of separate back out a little bit, if you can see that. And I can see the bubbles going. That's what I'm looking for. I can see it starting to kind of wake up a little bit. So I'm just going to give it one last stir. I've got my fermenter in here, 1 gallon jug going. It's all clean. Everything here has been cleaned, again, with something like Star San, not with regular dish soap, with hot water or boiling water, then Star San, then a rinse, and just kind of let it dry. You'll see some stuff, if you can make it out on the side of the bottle. This time around I'm using a pure pressed Simply Apple juice. This comes in the refrigerated section, so I have to let it come up to room temp. It's still pasteurized, it's still a sealed bottle. I tried it, I tasted it. It wasn't off or anything. It wasn't a big deal. So I'm going to give that a shot, see if I get a more, less sugary, more appley flavor out of it. So we've got a little funnel here. Oop. Got a little funnel here. Drop that in. Drop my mix right in there. And away it goes. You can kind of see the bubbles start to go. Right now I had filled up that 1 gallon jug only part way. These are 1.8 quarts, so 4 quarts to the gallon. I filled it with one of those, and I'm going to let the second one do some of the mixing for me. You can see there is some stuff in this. It's just pure press. It's not filtered, so it makes it kind of more similar to apple cider than apple juice, like I was using before. I mentioned, you know, just getting the cheapo bottles of apple juice as long as it doesn't have the wrong kind of preservatives from BJ's. I've done a couple like that. It does come out fine. I just wanted to experiment and see what the difference was. So this first batch, this recipe, if you're following along, kind of will be with the good stuff. It'll be with the cider yeast rather than a champagne yeast, and with pure pressed apple juice rather than with the cheapy kind of sugary stuff. Although I tried to avoid anything with a lot of added ingredients before. I'm just pouring. That's kind of doing some stirring for me. I'm going to end up moving this to a shelf anyways. Another side note as to how I got my temperature up, and I knew I got that right. I did that just by running the water with the thermometer right underneath it, kind of seeing when the temperature leveled off, and then I just, of course, filled my little container, left the thermometer in it for a second, made sure the temperature didn't really move. It was under the 80 that's required for this particular yeast. Always read your packets, and I figured I was good to go. So I'm not going to leave much headspace, but this actually, I'm going to add a splash from another bottle I picked up. These are a little on the pricey side. I mean, pricey being $3.60 or something like that for a couple quarts, so still not going to really break the bank on me. If it makes a better cider, it's worth it. If it doesn't, I'll switch back, but I'm just going to grab one more bottle and come right back. Alright, you may have seen I'm in pajama pants. I don't really care. I'm done with work. I'm being comfortable. So this one's a little chilly. You do want them to come up to temperature, but this one's been sitting out for a good chunk. I can still feel it's a little cool, but I'm okay with that. And I'm just going to stop right maybe an inch below where the neck starts or something like that, maybe an inch and a half. I don't know if that's right, but it hasn't caused me any problems yet, so that's what I'm going to go with. All right, I have my airlock here, not the bubble style, the very, very simple straight tube coming up with a vessel around it kind of thing. The way these work, if you've never used one, is your little line tells you where to fill it up to. Use a stopper. I push mine nice and far down into the stopper to make sure the stopper kind of spreads out a little bit, and that makes it easier to seal this up and cap this jug off without really having to shove the stopper way down and have it be really low and difficult to get out after. So there's this pipe that's going to let the gas escape. There's this little cap here that has these holes all around in it, and you're going to fill this part up to about here with water. So you're going to have water around the outside, gas tube on the inside. This is going to plop down into the water, and then as the gas builds up and the pressure builds up, the gas is going to go into this cap, lift it. When it lifts it to a certain point, air will actually escape because it'll be above that watermark, and your CO2 gets out. The thing immediately drops back down. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, so you're not going to get anything from the air around you in terms of wild yeast or whatever is in your air coming back in, because the only reason it's lifting it is because there's just so much pressure building up. So just regular old tap water, no big deal. Get it up to that fill line. I should fill a little too much. A little more. Yeah, that'll work. Drop this piece in. Shove it into the top of the jug a little bit nice and firm. And now I have my jug of cider that's going. It's going to be much darker than my last one in terms of the color of the juice itself. I'm also guessing it's going to take a lot more time to separate out. To kind of clarify, I'm definitely planning on racking this more times than I did before. The nice part about that filtered juice is you have to rack to get it off the dead yeast to eliminate any of those off flavors, but it's a little bit forgiving because there's not a heck of a lot else in there that you're trying to get it cleared from. Tastes a little better if it's clear rather than cloudy. That's one of the things we're going to look for going forward. So it starts a lot more clear, which means I don't quite have to be quite as careful handling it and don't have to rack it quite as many times I would expect, although this is my first time with this type of juice. All right, be back. I It's got to take its time, so I'll be back in a few weeks with bottling this particular one, and we'll find out how it turns out. Thanks for watching. Remember, produce your freedom or life will produce your chains. I'm out.